Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the RepPath Podcast. Today we have a great topic because this is something that everyone that isn't in the industry yet is dying to know about. And there's a lot of myths, a lot that we're going to debunk today about the main myths in medical sales. And before we get into that though, guys, as always, please make sure if you want to see the recording of this podcast to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching. Obviously, it's 100% free. So get on there so you can get this content and, this episode and all our previous episodes so you can view it at your own leisure. Secondly, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and also on every podcast platform. And most importantly, guys, for any of you that do not know about the RepPath Academy yet, please make sure you go on my LinkedIn calendar and reach out and check out our website at reppath.com. So you can learn more about the Academy and what it takes to really break in this industry. We're helping new reps every week break in. At the bottom of the page, you could see up there are some of our recent graduates. Please view those testimonials, guys. These are real candidates that were in your shoes only a few months ago and are now doing really well in this industry. So make sure you reach out to learn more about the RepPath Academy today. And without further ado, then, guys, we're going to dive right in.
Real quick, make sure you put your questions in. So halfway through the show that I can answer them for you, and Joe, or I can tell Joe them for you, and he can answer them.
Thank you.
Always one thing. There's always one thing, Joe. I got to make sure that we don't forget.
I know. Thank you, buddy. So please, guys, any questions, please submit to the chat, and then we'll address them about halfway through the podcast. So today we're going to talk about debunking those myths. So everyone out there, guys, you all have a family friend, family member, a buddy, someone that you know that's in the industry or knows someone that's in the industry, and they're well-intentioned. They're always trying to do, what's right for you and give you the right information. But with saying that, guys, there's a lot of bullshit out there. A lot of these myths get created because people, again, they heard from a friend, and then it's like the game of telephone that it's 3 or 4 friends down the line, and then they start creating these misperceptions. So the purpose of today's call is to give you my honest feedback. Some of you may disagree. If you disagree, that's great. That's fine. But these are my experiences. This is what I dealt with, so I'm going to give you, close to 25 years of experience, and be real. I'm not going to be nice just to be nice. I'm not going to be all sunshine and rainbows to say that this is the greatest career in the world and everyone should do it. And there's no negatives that come with this industry. I mean, that's just nonsense. Of course there is in every industry. There's no perfect job out there, but we're going to go over some of the common misperceptions that people hear, or some that just, I'm going to clarify for you and say, yeah, this is true. So we're just going to go topic by topic and just rattle them off. And then whatever questions you guys, come up with, we'll discuss it, about a half hour, around 3:30 today. So first myth that we're going to talk about is in medical sales, you have total freedom. Okay. That's not necessarily true, guys. You're going to be in the car by yourself. That's your free time. You're going to have freedom to pretty much set up your own schedule, and yes, there is more freedom than sitting behind a desk working with, in cubicles with other individuals around you where you have to be in that desk from 9 to 5, but at the end of the day, guys, you're not completely free to just do whatever you want out there. A lot of reps think that, you're going to have a hiring manager, or you're going to have either a regional sales manager or a district manager who you're reporting to that, is still going to be making sure that they know where you are. They're not going to sit here. I mean, some companies want to see what you're doing every call, where they have sign-in pads that reps are getting signatures at doctors' offices just to record the time that they're there. And when you're interviewing for jobs, guys, you want to find this out during the process when you're speaking to reps before the interview. So learn about the job when you get in there, because this is a huge game changer for me. I know in the industry when I started, they didn't have a lot of that crap, But over the years, they started wanting to track where reps are. So they had these electronic sign-ins. Every time you dropped off samples, they're constantly tracking you in your car, whatever it may be. But a lot of times you are being watched. And I'm not being like, crazy, conspiracy theorist that Big Brother's watching you or anything, but you're not fully free. You do have a lot of freedom, but again, you're going to have a hiring manager that, they're going to see your calls on a daily basis. You're going to have calls with your hiring manager, either if not daily or a couple times a week, where they're going to want updates. So, at the end of the day, though, you're not completely free to just do whatever you want. All right. So just want to make sure that you're in the car. Yes, you have freedom. Yes, during the day, if you're running in between cases or you're going from one office to the next, can I stop and drop off the dry cleaning? Can I set up a dentist appointment during the day and bang that out? Do the little errands that most people that are sitting behind a desk can't do. Absolutely. And if you do have a manager or company that's even, ridiculing that, then that's, you might want to second think working for a company that cares that much to track every movement you make. But you're gonna have the freedom to do some of those things. But again, don't just think you get a job and that's it. You're out and you're able to do whatever you want. No, guys. They're going to be tracking your calls. They're going to be tracking a lot of your progress. But the most important thing that you can do if you want to get more freedom, more flexibility to do what you want, crush your number. If you're kicking ass with your numbers, very few companies are going to care what you're doing. It's just that simple. I was that type of manager. I worked with managers that way. A lot of managers, if you're hitting your number and you're doing well, they're not going to bother you. You're going to have more freedom. Once you start screwing up, once you're not hitting your number a quarter or two in a row, you're going to get, it's just human nature. You're not hitting, you're not performing. So they're going to be on you to see what you're doing more. They're going to be tracking you more, and it's annoying. So if you want that more freedom, crush your number. All right. So next myth. You're going to work 70, 80 hours a week, especially in medical device. Complete myth. Bullshit. Not true. Okay. I'm very realistic when it comes to working hours every week. So a couple of things I do want to clarify, though. I don't count working at 7:00 at night if you want to answer a couple emails. If some of you guys do think that's work, that to me is not work. You could do that when you're watching a Yankee game or having dinner with your family. It doesn't take that much time, guys. It's seconds to respond to an email. If you consider that still working, then maybe not want to get into this industry, because a lot of times you're going to be answering emails from your manager, from your colleagues, especially if a customer contacts you. You don't check out. The doctor doesn't care that you'd only work 9 to 5. That doesn't happen in this industry. All right. If someone calls you, you pick up the phone. For me, I don't care when it was. I'm responding to a customer right away. You can handle it differently if you want, but I don't count a couple of emails at night as still working. I count when I either get to my first office or my first hospital into my first case. That's where my day starts. It's not when I get in the car. So for me, saying that you're going to work 60, 70 hours a week, that means if you're working 70 hours a week, that's almost 12 hours a day. You're not getting to your first hospital 5 days a week at 7 a.m. and leaving at 7 p.m. at night. That's just not true. So the hours that people like to throw around, you'll hear that a lot in device. Some people would say, I'm working 80, 90 hours. Again, guys, unless you have a trauma job where you're constantly, covering cases and really killing yourself, very few reps are putting in those kinds of hours. The reality is, in device, you're going to be working probably 40 to 50 hours a week. In pharma, you're probably working 20 to 30 hours a week. And a lot of pharma managers, you get upset and people are going to say, that's nonsense. Why are you saying that? That's real, guys. I did these jobs. There's only so many hours a day you can call on doctors' offices, when a lot of them you can't even get in to see. A lot, they will only see you for breakfast or lunch. Then there's many that you don't even go see anymore because they're never going to use your product. So your territory shrinks a little bit. So there's only so many times you could just call on offices in pharma and spend hours and hours a day doing so. You're not calling on offices past 5 o'clock because 95% of them aren't even open. So very few are you're going to work, big, 50 plus hour weeks. It doesn't happen that often. Sometimes in device, but I'd say on average, device you're working between 40 and 50 hours. You're going to get people that say different things. A lot of them are just trying to impress you to show that they're working more. So that's like a badge of honor. Again, good for them. At the end of the day, the average rep is only doing those hours. So don't be scared off when you hear sometimes, I covered cases, I was in cases, for up until a couple of years ago that I was there till after 12 at night. Now, did I do that 5 days a week? No. I wouldn't want to work any job where I'm covering cases till after midnight every night. Nobody does. Once in a while that would happen. Sometimes you're working until 6 or 7 at night. But on average, a lot of these cases by 3, 4 o'clock, nobody wants to be in an OR. By 3 o'clock, a lot of the ORs, no one's even in there anymore. They're up early and done by that time. So don't be scared off by that, guys. It is a great career, to be able to still get your gym workouts in, be able to go to the kids' games, and actually have a social life where you're not totally consumed by your job. But saying that, you do have to work hard if you want to be successful in this business, especially on the device side, because it is more demanding because you do have more case coverage, and you also, but you can't count the working, sending a couple of emails out or responding to emails, doing a little admin work after hours. For me, again, I didn't count that as work because it's something now, since we have cell phones the past 20 years, you're kind of never fully off is the point I'm getting at, is that you got to be able to still balance that too. We're not totally consumed. But at the end of the day, guys, it's not that demanding in terms of hours per week. Next is, I'm sorry, the direct patient interaction in this industry. So if you're getting in the industry, and especially part of the interview process, you're going to say, and I hear this all the time, I love dealing with patients. I have a passion for that. I want to help patients out. And that's great. You got to have a real understanding of the number of medical device, not even pharma, because pharma, there's few, if any, that you're going to have real patient interaction. It's very rare. You're going to be dealing with the doctor, and the doctor is going to report back to you how the patient did on whatever drug that they prescribed and that your company sells. But you're not sitting there with patients, actually talking to them, educating them, hearing about their issues and helping them through it. In pharma, that never happens. In device, it happens sometimes, but it's still very rare. So you'll be in cases, there's a patient on the table, your product helps the patient, you're there to support, but very few, for instance, spinal cord stimulation, I used to sell that. There was a heavy patient interaction where we're a part of the case. And then after the case, once they're implanted, that patient leaves with our cell phone. And then you're kind of married to that patient, because if there's a problem, they're going to call you first and you got to answer it. So, but that's rare. There's very few spinal cord stim jobs, where it's very rewarding in one part dealing with patients, and also dealing with patients is very stressful, because there is zero time 9 to 5. When patients are calling you, it's 2, 3 in the morning. You cannot answer if you don't want, but you're always worried about them calling the doctor and say, hey, I called Joe, he didn't answer. And then you're afraid of losing that business. So, but at the end of the day though, guys, you got to be aware there's not a lot of patient interaction where you're actually selling, talking to patients, seeing the success face to face. There's only a few device jobs that do that. For the most part, you're going to be learning about the success of the patients through the doctor. All right. Next is selling time. This is a big myth. You hear reps say this all the time. Joe, I want a medical sales job where I sell all day long. Guys, they don't exist. All right. When you factor in the travel time between offices, when you factor in the administrative work that you have to do, the waiting, before you're seeing a doctor on the pharma side, or waiting, for cases to start, delays, everything. Actual selling time, the data shows, is between 7 to 10% of the time that you're actually selling. I mean, in front of customers selling. So you got to understand that, guys. You're not just getting up all day long, going from office to office and presenting whatever you're presenting in front of groups of people, doctors, nurses, staff. It just doesn't happen. You'll do a lunch. When you do a lunch, the lunch will come in, you'll set it up. You'll have an hour to 2 hours. Sometimes, you could spend a while there, and as people come in, you'll have conversations with them, and yeah, you're selling, you're talking to them, but it's a conversation here for 5 minutes, another one here for 10. The doctor usually comes in at the beginning or the end. We'll talk to you for, could be 2 minutes, could be a half hour, but that's the real selling time that you get. When you go in and out of offices, sometimes you'll wait an hour to see the doctor for 30 seconds. That's your selling time. It's 30 seconds. So you have to be prepared for that. And again, I'm not telling you this to scare you off, but this is the reality of the sales role, that you're not just, you have appointments set up all day long and all you're doing is selling. It's not. It's a lot of waiting, and that's the part that when we talk about resilience, it's not about going in and out of offices. And you hear this all the time. Joe, I got thick skin. I'm going to be great in this industry. Yeah. Who gives a shit? So does everyone else. But what do you do not only when the doctor doesn't see you, but say he does see you, but you got to wait an hour and a half in an office, just sitting there waiting for the doctor to give you 30 seconds. It sounds like, hey, I'll do whatever it takes. Guys, you do that week after week after week, that's where you really find out who has the real resilience, who's really persistent. When I'm going to sit there for an hour and a half just to get that few seconds with him, but I don't care. I'll do it. That's the mental challenge that it takes sometimes in this industry, because it's not them welcome you with open arms every time you walk in. They're busy. They got their practice to run. So you got to make sure that you understand that the selling time is not as much as you think. Okay. The other one along the same lines is, all I want to do is sell. You'll hear that, especially in device. I'll hear, Joe, I don't want to cover cases. All I want to do is sell. Guys, very few jobs are out there like that. And if there are out, the few that are out there, trust me, they have a line 5,000 reps long of reps that want that job. All I want to do is sell all day long too. Even with RepPath, there's so much admin and bullshit and expense accounts and salaries or whatever else that you got to do behind the scenes, just sending out bills to customers and tracking that down, the accounting end. It sucks. I don't want to do any of that, but I have to, because it's my business. But, I love this interaction. I love when I'm on the phone. I love when we're doing the RepPath Academy and we're teaching reps how to become better candidates. That's what I love, but there's so much else that goes into it. So you got to understand that, guys. There's so much else that's going into it, where you're not going to just have a job where you're just selling. Odds are you're going to have to cover cases too. Even if you have clinical specialists that help you cover your cases, doesn't mean that all you do is sell, and the clinicals are out there just covering cases. A lot of times you're dividing and conquering. They're covering a case, you're covering a case. In between, you're trying to get to offices to sell, to present to more doctors. But usually it's a combination of both, even as a territory manager. So again, just making you aware that when you go into these interviews, you got to have a better understanding, because the more that you understand and know about the role, the more serious of a candidate they're going to take you. If you're not fully have a full understanding of what you're getting into, they will not hire you. So again, make sure you're having these conversations with reps that work at the company before you get the job, before you're even in these interviews, because you got to know what you're talking about. All right. Next. Okay, let's talk about all the glamour and perks. So yes, it is true. A lot of good benefits when it comes to medical sales jobs. All right. You're going to get, for most, not every job out there, but typically, let's start with pharma. You'll get a base salary. You'll get a quarterly bonus or monthly bonus or commission. Get a company car or an allowance. cell phone or cell phone allowance, medical, dental, vision, 401k. Then some will offer stock options. Some will offer a little bit better perks. But again, there are overall, I think the benefits and perks of this job are great, because a lot of times you'll hear reps, especially for you entry level reps, the average rep makes about 98,000 a year. That's base and bonus and total commission. So the total OTE is about 98,000. So you're right at about six figures. That doesn't include the car, guys. That doesn't include the cell phone, the benefits, the health benefits, the 401k. When you start factoring all that in, now you're getting much, much higher than 100,000 a year. Because believe me, when you have your own business and you got to pay for a lot of that shit, trust me, you miss it. I love having my own business, but I do miss having my insurance paid for. I do miss having essentially a free car, not paying for gas. All those things, they add up. So that is one thing about our industry that I think is outstanding. Now, you could get jobs that don't offer that, and that could happen too, especially a lot of 1099 jobs. 1099 roles, a lot of them don't even pay for that because you're an independent contractor. So everything comes out of your pocket. But for most device companies, the only difference between device and pharma, typically, not every time, pharma gives you a car, device gives you a car allowance. To each his own. Sometimes people have a car that they like and they rather just get paid the allowance because they don't want to trade it in and get a RAV4 or Ford Fusion or whatever the Ford Taurus or whatever rep cars they have out there now. And then some reps say, screw it, I don't care, just give me the car. I don't want to have to deal with anything. So you do have to, there is slight differences there, which, side note, guys, make sure for any of you trying to break in, your driving record, obviously DWIs are a killer in this industry, especially if they're going to insure you with a car. You're probably not going to pass that background check. But even for some smaller violations, the cleaner you have your driving record, the more easy it is for these companies to give you an offer, because when they do these background checks, sometimes stuff comes up that makes them a little, weary to give you a company car, because again, it affects the insurance and everything else with the company. So sometimes they're not as, likely to give an offer. All right. So again, that's an awesome benefit of this industry. Benefits, outstanding. All right. Next is technology/AI. It's going to replace reps everywhere. Guys, listen, first off, I don't know where the next 50 years are going to take us, but as of today, that's all I can speak for. I'll probably be the first one to get replaced by AI if it happens, but right now I'm embracing AI. And I think every one of you out there should be doing that. I work with many AI companies out there that if I'm not working directly with, they are reaching out to me every week because they want me to consult with them, because they're creating new platforms that it's so exciting, guys. It's so awesome, and we're actually working on something in collaboration with a company soon. So stay tuned for that, because it's really exciting stuff. But I don't want to get too much into that. But right now, guys, the best piece of advice I can give about this myth is we don't know what the future holds. All right. But if you don't embrace it and say, I'm going to get better at AI, I'm going to use AI in the field as another tool, and not say, shit, that's the competition. I'm not going to deal with that. Screw that. I'm going to be the old school reps that's just going to go in there face to face, have conversations with doctors. Good luck. Keep doing that. Let me know where that gets you, guys. If you don't embrace AI, you're going to fall behind. All right. So the myth is it going to replace us? My opinion, no, it's not doing it anytime soon. So for now, embrace it and make it another tool in your bag, because it's going to help you get ahead and for the present. But don't think in the future, all of a sudden there's going to be robots everywhere. We don't know. For now, embrace AI and get better at it so you can compete with all the other reps out there. All right. Let's see. Try to think of some of that, because I got a bunch of myths. So I'm reading through a bunch of these. The money, medical sales. You make a lot of money in medical sales. Guys, yes, you can. All right. So the answer is yes, you can make a lot of money. It depends on what is a lot to you, but here are the facts. On average, the average medical sales rep, pharma device, everything included, makes $178,000 a year. That's base, commission, total OTE. So sometimes reps make substantially more than that. There's reps making 4 or 5 over $1 million a year, but it's rare. So only about 8% make over $300,000 a year. These are sales reps. Of course, there's managers, VPs and all making, substantially more, but I'm talking about sales reps. The average rep is 178. The average top performing rep makes between 2 and 250. Now, you're going to tell me, Joe, I know my friend, he made 375. My friend made 450. Yeah, of course they're out there, guys. I'm just saying these are the facts in the data that only about 10%, a little less than 10% make over 300,000 a year. So it's still great money. I don't, most people will say that's good money. You might not say it is. I think it is, but you just got to be realistic. It's not like you get one of these jobs and all of a sudden you're gonna have making $300,000 a year every year for your career. It's rare. So you just got to be very cognizant that you're going to probably be between the 175 and 250 range. That's where the majority of reps are. All right. Next, let me see here. This is just a quick myth that I think a lot of you know. You do not need a medical background to break into this industry. It doesn't matter if you're a bio major, communications major. For the most part, you could still break in without a 4-year degree, but it's very difficult because there's just less opportunities out there, but they're still out there. Very few pharma companies will hire you without a college degree. Just doesn't happen. Very few pharma companies will hire a college graduates right out of college. They usually want at least a year of B2B sales experience. Now, device and distribution, especially, you're more likely to get one of those jobs because they will hire reps right out of college. We've placed tons of those reps at many distribution and medical device companies. They like getting reps where they're green and they can train them. And they want the ones that have the intangibles that they could just go out there and make stuff happen. They'll hire them right away. So you don't have to have a science degree. Definitely doesn't matter. Sure, it can help when a company here or there, they require it, but it's very rare. As long as you got that 4-year degree, and you show them that you could do this and that you're the right person for the job, you'll be able to get most medical sales jobs. But the pharma side is more difficult. They usually want that year of B2B sales experience. Let me see what else I have here. This is one. Do the device managers respect pharma reps? This is one I'm going to get in trouble with, and I'm going to say it because it's a fact. Not every, of course, there's always outliers, but for the most part, if you start in pharma and then try to get into medical device, it's harder. It's much harder. You could start in device and get into pharma more easily than going from pharma into device. And the reason is a lot of these hiring medical device managers, they don't respect pharma reps as much. And I'll say it. I've been a pharma rep. I've been a device rep. I've been a manager. I've seen both sides. And the perception is because you're not in cases all day long, because you don't work those longer hours, they have the perception that you're not going to be able to bust your butt in this job. You're not going to be able to handle the longer hours when you get it. So just be wary of that. I mean, just be, I just want to be clear with that there are a lot of device managers out there that they will not look at pharma reps, especially the longer that you've been a pharma rep, the more they think that you can't break out of that work life mentality and do the device world where you're going to work much longer hours. So that is something that you do want to be aware of, because some of you guys that are looking to break in, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to get this pharma job first. Okay, that's great. You can have a great career. But if you want to go into device after, then it's very difficult. So if you look at my background, you're going to say, Joe, you're full of shit. You're a hypocrite. You went from Organon to Boston Scientific, 100%. I went from pharma to device. The only reason why I got the device job with Boston Scientific was because they wanted someone that had strong pain management relationships. And I used to sell a drug called Avinza, which was a Schedule II drug in competition with OxyContin. So they liked my pain management relationships and background. That's the only reason why I got the job in device. So they overlooked that. So you can get a job, but it's more difficult, but it does help, especially when you have those relationships that they're looking for. If you have a therapeutic area that you have good relationships in, they might not care where you came from. They just know, Dr. Jones, great. We want you on our team. Obviously they're not going to say it that way, but that can help you get to break from pharma to device. But I'm going to take a break right now and pause. James, do we have any questions from the crowd?
Yeah, we got a couple questions. I was waiting for my weekly movie reference, but we didn't get one yet. So
it's got to come. It's got to come naturally.
Oh, I know it does.
Yeah.
I was
Something's going to come before the end.
I'm sure it is. Joe, do you think social media has glamorized medical sales in a way that sets false expectations for newcomers?
I think yes and no. I think there's a lot of, let's be real. I see a lot of things on TikTok and Instagram where, there's good looking young reps, guys and girls that they're really doing it just to show off their abs, show out their workout routines or show how pretty they are. And it's kind of corny to me, but I'm old and ugly. So I don't do that stuff, but I get it. What's that?
I said, you got that right.
Thank you. So, but yeah, they don't, that to me is a little corny, but I get it. It gets clicks. It gets you to recognize it. Sometimes though, their messaging a lot of times, if you actually pay attention to the messaging, which most people don't because they're staring at the good looking person on the screen, but their messaging a lot of times I think is pretty accurate, when they show the day in the life, but guys, there's always going to be bullshit when you're seeing stuff online. No one's going to show a video on TikTok of them waiting for 2 hours for a case to start. It's going to be amped up with graphics, with, different images. Even that, they're going to take something that's boring as hell and make it look interesting. But the reality is, guys, it's still a job. I love this business. I love the industry, but there's days that it sucks. You're waiting. Nobody wants to wait for anyone. That you can't glamorize that no matter what you do. So just you just got to understand that. Don't believe everything you're seeing. Talk to reps, especially talk to reps that have openings at the company that you want to apply for. Those are the ones you really want to get an understanding of what the day-to-day life is. Don't just look at these TikTok videos and go, I have a good understanding. Guys, no, they're made to get clicks, and it's made to look more exciting than what it really is. So just don't go in there with some caution. That's all.
How often do reps realize within the first few months that this job isn't what they expected?
I think I'd say about almost half. I'd say at least 30% of the time that reps, I think the big punch to the gut is that, wow, doctors don't really give a shit about what I'm selling. People don't really care that much to see me because you're going to come out and go into training. And training, you come out fired up. You think your drug or your device is the best thing in the world. And you should. You should have that confidence. You got to be realistic too, guys. You got to believe in what you're selling. But you also got to be realistic that there are a lot of options out there. There's very few products that are so unique and so revolutionary that doctors have no choice but to use you. It's very difficult. It's very rare. They occur. They happen every couple of years where there's blockbusters that really take off, of course. But for the most part, it's a Me Too world where there's Me Too products, Me Too devices, Me Too pharma drugs, and that's okay, guys, because at the end of the day, you got to sell yourself. So I think that's the biggest punch to the gut. Reps come out there, they're all fired up. I got the best drug. I got the best device. They get out there and they're like, holy shit, wow, I called on 10 offices today. I didn't see one doctor. Or I've been working all week and I didn't see a doctor, and it's like, wow, I don't want to do this. This sucks. That's the biggest punch to the gut that a lot of reps get. And I will tell you this though, guys, no matter how bad it is, if access is a real challenge, it gets better. Those offices that look at you like you're disgusting the first time you walk in there, trust me, give it time. In a few months, these are the same offices that are like smiling, big open, they got a big smile on their face. They're welcoming you in the back in a few months. It happens. But that takes your effort. That takes your ability to bring value, because you'll see that turn around. So just don't be so wow, like what the hell did I get myself into? That's why I always want to be realistic with everyone, so you don't have that. So you know what you're getting yourself into, so you're not built off these false expectations. So, but I'd still say between that, I'd say, I guess between 30, so about 40% of the time reps are like, wow, this is not what I thought. I do think most reps though, after that, as they give it more time, they realize, wow, it's getting better. But the ones that quit and can't last, you'll see that within the first 3 to 6 months, because they're like, wow, this isn't for me. But they didn't try to work past to build those relationships, so it started to get better.
We have Joe, do commission structures change from company to company? And can you break down a common commission structure so new reps don't get blindsided by them?
Yeah. And it definitely depends on the company. So to break it down a little bit between pharma and device, and I'm going to simplify this. We're not going to get into every structure because, again, we could be here for months talking about it. But generally, in pharma versus device, you'll get a quarterly bonus based on where you're ranked in the sales team. So sometimes with pharma, they'll have a bucket of bonus dollars that they have set aside. So we'll just make numbers easy. There's 100 reps at a company. They have $100,000 in the bonus pool, and that's going to be spent at the end of the quarter, no matter what. No matter how high the sales or how low the sales, they have money set aside for bonus dollars. And then depending on where you're ranked, you'll get, anywhere from $0 to $10,000. And again, it could be much higher than this. It could be in that range, depends on the company. But usually it's based on having a pool of bonus dollars that get distributed to the reps. So the higher you're ranked, the better bonus you're going to get. Now, there's also commission payments that could happen monthly. That typically happens in device. So for instance, when I worked in one of my previous device jobs, I got a monthly commission check on top of my base salary, and then I would get a quarterly bonus. If I hit my number and above, I would get a certain dollar amount above that. So a lot of times though, in device, the difference between device and pharma, typically pharma, you're getting commissions, usually monthly commissions, sometimes quarterly. Device, you're getting monthly or quarterly commissions. Pharma, you're getting quarterly bonuses. The money in device typically is the ceiling is much higher. So I've seen reps make 100 or more in a quarter just in their bonus. I've never seen that in pharma. Pharma, I've heard reps making 30, in a quarter, maybe 40, but it's very rare. They usually get higher base salaries versus the lower base salary that a device rep will get. But usually the potential is much, much higher in device.
Is there a truth to the idea that device reps make way more than pharma reps?
Yes. So I would say the average rep is still very comparable when you're looking at a national average. They're still both in that 170-ish range. But I know more device reps that have made over $300,000 a year than I do pharma reps. There's very few pharma reps that I know. I mean, a lot of rare disease reps, you'll hear them making 300-400 plus. The problem with a lot of the rare disease jobs, they don't last that long. So a lot of these rare disease reps are constantly looking to jump to another company. And that's our industry, which it sucks about the industry. It's very volatile. So, you're not going to be at the same job for the next 30 years of your life. I hope you are, but it's rare. So you're always, every couple of years, unfortunately, you're looking for new jobs. And that sucks to do because you want to get settled and really grow in a company. But those rare disease jobs, they're great jobs. They pay really well. But again, I don't know many reps that are doing that 10, 15 years in a row. They're constantly going to another company. So I'd say overall, if you're looking for more financial opportunity, I think device has more upside. But pharma is definitely a great career. It's just a little bit safer in terms of, if you're looking to pay your monthly bills, you can have more of the ups and downs in device than you are more of a steady pay stream in pharma.
How much travel is actually involved?
So the difference between travel with device and pharma, in my experiences, I traveled a hell of a lot more in device because, when you're covering, I had roles, I covered the whole country. I covered half the country. I covered a region, and I covered in local states. You're definitely traveling much more in device. Now, depending on how big your territory is, and this you want to ask during the interview. This you want to find out before the interview when you're talking to reps, because you don't want to be traveling and doing 3 overnights a week, guys. You might say you don't care now. Trust me, it sucks. When you're doing 3 nights a week, when you're sleeping in Holiday Inns, in, these random bumble places around the country, it's not fun. You're living out of your suitcase and, you don't want one of those roles. But for me, I think that's still pretty rare. You just want to ask them how many overnights, you're having a month, and they'll definitely be able to tell you that. Pharma, it was very, very rare. Usually you're getting either a couple of counties or maybe a state or a couple states, depending if you're, for instance, if you're in the Northeast, there's very few pharma roles where you're covering multiple states. You're going to have a couple counties or maybe a state, but it's going to be doable where you're home every night. If you're out west, usually there's doctors aren't, the geography isn't as populated as it is in the East Coast and especially the Northeast. So you're going to have maybe a couple of states when you're out in Idaho and Montana, where you're going to have more of that coverage. But you just want to, the only way to really know is speaking to that hiring manager or those reps to know exactly how much travel that is, because it could be substantial, and especially if you want to get into management, be prepared to be a manager in this business. You're going to be traveling a lot. You're going to build up a lot of miles because there's very few companies that have such dense districts or regions where they don't have to travel that much as a manager. The higher you get up there, guys, the more you're going to travel. So I know it's a long answer. Bottom line, more travel I've seen in device than in pharma.
We got how much pressure is there to hit quota every month?
I'd say more in device, but you're still a sales rep. Doesn't matter what your pharma device, you got to hit your number. So typically device, you could miss your number 1 quarter here, a quarter there. You're missing your number a couple quarters in a row, you could be put on a PIP. And a PIP is a performance improvement plan. That's not a good thing, guys. That means they're getting ready. They're sending out the information to you and also HR. They're getting ready to terminate your employment there. So when they put you on a performance improvement plan, that basically means you're going to probably have a month, up to 6 months, depending on whatever the timeline is, where you got to get your numbers up or you're gone. So, again, I'm not trying to tell you this to scare you, but if you guys can't handle the pressure of having to hit a number month after month, quarter after quarter, do not get in this industry, because you're here to perform and you're as good as your last sale. You'll hear that all the time, guys. You could be a 3-time President's Club winner. You're not hitting your number the next year. They don't care. So you got to have that mentality to always want to compete, or don't get in this industry, because that stress, because especially you could be doing a lot of things right. I've had this happen to me where I had a patient on the table. It was the last day of the quarter. I needed this surgery to go off to hit my number. And the patient's blood work came back that they couldn't, it was a no-go to do the case. I've had this happen. I had a patient freak out, and had an anxiety attack that the doctor said, Joe, we're going to reschedule on Tuesday. Now I'm sitting there. This is the last day of the quarter. I can't freak out in front of the doctor and the patient that I'm not going to hit my number. But these are things that happen that are completely out of your control. But the company doesn't care. At the end of the day, this was your number. You fell short. Don't care. But they're also not going to, just because you don't hit your number one quarter, look to fire you. All right. So you always want to be doing, everything you can, with building relationships within the company, with doing all your administrative work, doing all the things outside of your number, because you could control most of those, guys. Control the controllables. Because when you're not hitting your number, trust me, if your expense reports are a disaster, your communication sucks with your manager, they will get rid of you. And they'll have the excuse because you didn't hit your number. But if all your other stuff is buttoned up, then they're less likely to look to fire you because they don't have as much of a reason just because you didn't hit your number for one quarter. But again, you got to have that competitive mentality or this will be the wrong industry to get into.
We got, do companies really expect you to know doctors before you even get hired?
No, it depends. So the answer for,
no,
especially
or it
for
depends.
entry reps, well, the answer is no. There are some times when they're hiring you because you're saying that you're coming in with this book of contacts. And that's the only reason why you're getting the job. You're saying, yes, I know all the pain specialists in North Jersey. I know Dr. Jones. I know Dr. Smith. So if you're going to say all that, then they're going to expect you to know doctors. So don't talk a big game, guys, if you don't really know doctors. You don't want to start playing that exaggerating. Yeah, I'm friends with this one. I'm friends with that one. You're going to come off stupid in the end. But if you do have those relationships, definitely share that. Because it could take one relationship with one doctor that this company really, really has been trying to get business from. And if you have that relationship, they can hire you because of that. But it's not like you're coming in this industry and then they expect you to know doctors or they're not going to hire you. That's just not true. You're going to build those relationships the longer that you're with a company anyway.
We got, what are some financial realities new reps don't prepare for, like taxes, travel costs, or delayed commissions?
I think the commission part, you should never live, paying your bills with your commission checks, guys. You just shouldn't, because you never know. The problem with this industry, I don't care who the company is. I don't care how nice the manager, how nice the leadership is. Shit happens at a company where they can change the comp plan at the drop of a hat like that. And you can go from making, say, $10,000, $15,000 a month in commissions to making $1,000 to $1,500, doing the same exact amount of business. I've seen it happen. That sucks. So you got to be prepared for that. Your bonuses, your commissions, you should treat as a bonus, as extra money, until you start getting built up a little bit and still get more in your savings account. You don't want to be living month to month saying, shit, I'm not going to be able to pay that $5,000 rent just on my base, but I'm going to be getting a couple thousand a month in commission too. So I should be fine. No, don't count on your commissions. I don't care how well you did this year. Everything can change the next year because they don't have to keep. There's nothing that you're going to sign or a company's going to sign with you that's going to guarantee you a certain commission with a company for life. They're not. So some companies might hire someone and give them a guarantee for a year or two, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, can they change a comp plan? And they could do it at the drop of a hat. So make sure that you're prepared, that you're not counting that money every month, that it's definitely going to be there, especially if you're looking to have a more lavish lifestyle, because that can really screw you up.
God, what's the truth about advancement? How fast can you actually move up?
Again, that's a tough question, but you got to be when you're looking at companies, the first thing you do when you're looking for, say opening at XYZ company, first thing I'm doing, obviously I'm researching the manager, I'm having the conversations with reps. But when you're on LinkedIn and you're looking at the individuals that work at that company, look at their tenure, guys. That's the first red flag. If you see a bunch of reps and managers that have been there a year, 6 months, 8 months, year and a half, that's a red flag. And I'm not talking if it's a startup. Obviously, everyone's going to be there only for a few months. But established companies should have people there 10 years. When you see people there 5, 8, 10, 15 years, that's a great sign. That means they take care of their people. So that's the first thing you want to look for. In terms of advancement, these are the conversations you got to have during the interview process. During your discovery, when you're talking to reps, ask them directly. Typically in the pharma world, the ideal path is to be a rep for 2, 3 years, maybe 5 years, and then hopefully a sales management position opens up. But again, it's very hard to predict because does it open up in your area? Okay, no. So now it's opening up on the West Coast and you live in Jersey. There's one in California. Are you willing to move with your family? Most reps might not be able to do that. So they gave you an opening, they gave you an opportunity, but you didn't want to take it. So if you want to increase your chances and speed up your ability to get promoted, if that's your end goal, then you have to be open to be able to move at the drop of a hat, guys, because the reps that do progress up the corporate ladder, you do see that they have that similarity where they're like, yeah, I used to live in Jersey. Then I moved my family to Dallas. Then we moved to California. And you're like, shit, man, I was never leaving the Northeast, but these guys do. And that's going to increase your chances of being able to move up. But there's no set timeline. I know reps that got promoted to management within months. And then I know reps that have been in jobs for 20 years and just nothing, aligned with them at that company where they were positioned to get a promotion in the right area that they wanted. So I know that doesn't really help, but it's a tough question because it's company dependent.
How honest are recruiters about job expectations when hiring?
How honest are recruiters?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely wouldn't just take what a recruiter's saying because, the reality is when a company comes to me and says, Joe, I have an opening, here's the product, here's the drug, this is the requirements. This is what we're looking for in a candidate. I don't know everything about that company. A lot of times I don't even have a full understanding sometimes of how the comp plan works, especially for some of the pharma companies, because it is a little bit more specific to that company that it's not so easy to say you'll get 5% commission on everything you sell. So you don't go by just what a recruiter is saying. It's good to get that information. They'll have enough information to whet your palate and make you get excited about the job. But when you're in front of that hiring manager, when you're speaking to those reps, they're the ones you really want to get the info from. The recruiter's there to, say, hey, do you like this? Does it sound interesting to you? If so, here's the pay. Here's the products you're going to be selling. We'll set up the call with the hiring manager or the HR department, whoever it is, whoever the next step in the process. That's when you really want to learn from those people because they know way, way more. Because recruiters, they could be working with 50 different companies. They're not going to know as much as the people that work there are. So take it with a grain of salt, but really get the information from the people that work there.
Are certain personality types better suited for medical sales?
Absolutely. I think one of the key characteristics that most companies, it's hard to find a bad candidate that has good energy, positive, good energy, always smiling, happy. And I'm not saying you act like a cheerleader and just, act like you're on some sort of hallucinogenic, Jesus, can't even talk, but they act all just, like you're on helium all day long. No, but just have that positive attitude, and bring energy. Those two things, most companies are going to be attracted to those individuals. They don't, if you got someone that's constantly real serious, not smiling. I mean, don't forget, you're in the public, guys. You're going to be working with not just doctors, but their whole staff, hospital teams, where they don't want someone that's an asshole, basically. So the more that you have that friendly personality and you have that good energy and excitement, and you bring that into those conversations, those are the reps that typically get hired.
We got, I believe, 2 more questions for you, Joe.
Beautiful.
One I think you kind of covered already, but we'll ask it anyway. Are the perks like company cars, dinners, travel still common, or are they mostly outdated?
Yeah, and that's, like I said, it's definitely still common. There are a lot of companies out there, though, that you got to ask. Don't assume that just because it's a medical sales company, whether it's pharma or device, that you're automatically going to get all these perks. You got to get that. You want to get that ironed out in these conversations along the way. You don't want to talk about that on the first call. So this is a good point to just bring up quickly, guys. That first interview is about you showing them why you're a great rep, why you're the best fit for this role. You're going to find out along the way about all the perks. You don't want to be in there in that first interview and start, talking about their 401k match. I mean, it's just, no, guys. You don't want to talk about how many vacation days you have in the first interview. Save those questions for later interviews when it looks like you're getting an offer, because they will make sure that you're fully, they're fully transparent about all that before they make an offer. So you'll have time for that. But again, most companies still give a lot of great benefits.
I got actually 2 more. Is medical sales mostly cold calling or relationship building?
It's a combination of both, but relationship building is definitely much more key to success. That's you can't just knock on doors all day. The game has changed since I started in this industry, where that was just go to those addresses, knock on doors, drop your card off, set up appointments. Eventually you'll get in. Now it's gotten much, much tougher. Doctors don't have as much time. They are getting bombarded with more patients, reimbursements that are dropping. So they got to see even more patients. They got more reps coming in there. So you have to be building relationships. And the relationships, guys, are your value whenever you leave that company. So take every relationship, not just with physicians. It could be the front office receptionist. I don't care who it is. It could be security within a hospital. The more relationships that you have, the stronger candidate you are, and you will get, obviously, you have a book of cardiology business that you have, know all these cardiologists. That's great. But now when you get into the hospital space, the tougher access gets, the more relationships you need to even get into these hospitals. So you want the relationships is the value. So make sure you do not take that lightly, guys, and just think, hey, it doesn't matter if I don't build them any relationships here. I'll build them on the next job. Like, no, you want to constantly be doing that, because I have relationships for 25 years that I can call a doctor or even someone from his staff. Some of them have retired since then, but they'll still, do anything for me because we had such a strong bond, because I brought value for years to them, even though it's years ago. So make sure it's real. It's about those relationships. The knocking on doors you got to do once in a while, of course, but that's not really how you're going to move the ball forward.
And the last question, Joe, people love to post about 6-figure incomes, but what percentage of reps are actually earning that in medical sales?
The majority are owning that in medical sales. Definitely. I mean, I don't know where everyone else lives. I know making 100,000. I mean, we're down in Miami now. 100,000 in Miami doesn't get you far. You need 2 incomes down here. And some people that are doing really well, obviously that, they can have one spouse doing everything, but majority of the people that are living in some of these areas, it's very difficult. So 100,000 obviously doesn't go as far as it did 20 years ago, but I'd say, a good 80% or more, maybe even 90%, you're going to make at least 6 figures.
That's all I got for you, Joe.
Awesome.
Nothing showed up in the movie reference.
I know
this week.
Yeah, this is, and I'm trying to think with some of these questions what I could have said, but
No, there
you
wasn't
can't.
really anything.
If it's forced, it's gonna.
It's not
I
the
mean,
same. It's not the
yeah,
same.
yeah. I mean, some of them are stupid anyway, but they're really gonna be stupid
No,
if
your
I
past
force
couple
them.
of weeks have been pretty good movie choices. Pretty good. You know what? I only have 2 movies that I have an issue with, that I have a bone to pick with you. Everything else has been pretty good.
And there's still most people won't admit it, but I know, and they obviously killed it at the box office, so I'm not the only one that thinks that way. So
Yeah, your quarterback Caleb Williams, who wears nail polish, and women.
well,
That's who killed it at the box office for him.
well, anyway, I promise next week I'll definitely come up with a couple that will get us back on track.
Perfect.
But thank you again, James, today, because those, again, and thank you guys out there, because those were great questions. Again, I don't want to scare anyone off, but I also don't want to be all sunshine and rainbows. I hope you guys, got some more clarity. Again, there's so many other topics that we can spend hours and hours on. Any other myths out there, please reach out to me. You can go, either via my website, RepPath.com, where you can reach out. Any questions that have come up, you could DM me on LinkedIn or send me an email, joe@reppath.com. If you have any other questions that we may not have covered today. But one more thing, guys, again, I really want to stress, for any of you that are looking to break in, you're tired of not hearing back from recruiters. You do one interview and then it just doesn't go anywhere. You kind of feel like, I'm done with this career. I'm going to pick something else. It's too hard. Reach out to me and let's talk about the RepPath Academy, because this is the answer for a lot of you guys out there, guys. Believe me, I know you're skeptical with a lot of other services when it's online. It's, a lot of shady shit out there. We are proven. You could speak to our reps that have completed the course and learn firsthand. So go on our website, RepPath.com. You could see those testimonials. If you really are serious about breaking into this industry, reach out to me, set up an intro call so we could discuss and get you started with the academy. And lastly, for any of you lobby members that are out there, please make sure you're giving the promo code when you reach out to me, Licata, Licata, and that'll enable you to get more discounts, for being a lobby member. Other than that, guys, thank you again. As always, we're going to be doing these calls every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if I don't talk to you, if I don't hear from any of you guys this week, we'll be back on Monday the 17th at 1 p.m. At 3 p.m. Excuse me. Thank you guys. Have a great week.